we go through, if we go through.
But other than that, I think we're ready.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. I assume everyone can hear me. Can everyone do an audio check, please?
Hello.
I can hear Lisa.
Check.
Check.
Your hand. Rocco, can I hear you?
I don't know. Can you?
Now I can. I can't see you very well, so I don't know if you moved over closer to Lisa, if I would be able to see you a little bit better. I hate to ask you to do that, but that way I know if you want to talk.
I'll just put that. Is that okay if I put this? And we got some batteries. So.
Do we have any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda?
Not that I'm aware of. Well, unless you wanted to add, I have a sort of financial update on the grant situation. If you want to do that at some point, maybe at the end.
That'd be great if you could add that to the end. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda with that addition?
Where did you want that added?
Under other business.
I move to approve the agenda with adding the financial update under other business.
We have a second.
I second. And
All in favor, say aye.
I.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that passes. This is our public comment period. Do we have a public comment that wants to be made? We've got a lot of people on Zoom here. Is there anybody on Zoom or anybody in person that would like to make public comment?
We have a few people in here in the room. Anyone here want to make public comment? No public comment in the room. Anyone on Zoom wish to make public comment? You should be able to unmute yourself if so.
I don't see anybody unmuting, so I'm assuming there's no comment to be made. So now let's go to our minutes. Nate has 2 meetings worth of minutes. If we can take a look at those and see if there's any changes for those.
I move to approve the minutes for September 13th and September 27th as submitted.
Thank you, Rocco. Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor, aye.
I.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That passes. We do not have any new business listed, so let's go straight to our land use code rewrite, and we welcome Austin. Austin, we appreciate all your work on this, and we're happy to have you just begin going through our A, B, and C here on the agenda.
Excellent. So I'd actually like to share screen. I've got a brief presentation. Nate, would you be able to give me that permission?
Yes, unless you want me to drive. I added your PowerPoint to the
Oh yeah, that works just as well.
whatever you prefer.
Yeah, that works. If you want to just control from there, that works for
Okay.
me.
All right.
Well, thank you guys. It's good to see all of you virtually again. Again, my name is Austin Flanagan. I'm one of your town attorneys, and I'm working with you all on the Land Use Code Update project. So first, I just want to say thank you for how responsive the Planning Commission has been through this process. This is a super tight timeline, and so far we are on schedule, if not a little bit ahead. So I'm excited about that process, and I'm excited that we have a draft in front of you tonight. And so speaking of process, Nate, if you want to scroll down a bit, I want to take a moment to talk about the project overview and how I see this moving forward from here. Just one second, I'm getting a bit of an echo. See if I can fix that. Okay. Okay, so you have your LUC draft in front of you, and then obviously I'm here today presenting it. So knocking out the first two steps, what comes next, and this is definitely something I would love to get the commission's feedback on, is the comments from the Planning Commission. Right now, we have that scheduled to just be a week. So it's a super quick turnaround to get those red lines from the Planning Commission. And ideally, I can get those in one draft and one document that would make my revisions much faster, which I would turn around in another week. And then throughout the month of November, about 3 weeks or so, or a little bit more, you take that second revised draft and take it on what I call the public engagement parade. And so ideally you get it out in front of the public in as many ways as possible and allow for all the feedback you can get. And I'm happy to talk through some of those strategies and tools for public engagement if you guys like. And then taking all of what you heard from the public, hopefully consolidating those comments down again into one draft and submitting me that public comment draft by mid-November is what we have now. I would turn around a revised draft ready for you to take up the issue for adoption, your first recommendation hearing on December 6th, give you another revised draft based off that Planning Commission hearing, and then turn it around for the Board of Trustees adoption hearing on December 13th. So super quick timeline. Couple of things I want to point out, and then I would love to hear from you guys on this slide before we move on to the more substantive topics, is we've got at least 3 revised drafts coming. So there's going to be multiple opportunities for the Planning Commission and others to get their comments in on this draft. So if you miss out in this first round, don't worry, you've got at least 2 more opportunities to get those comments in, and we'll be making those revisions all along the way. But I would like to know if the Planning Commission feels like this is a good timeline, if there's some dates we need to move around right now.
Austin, I think this is how it has to be.
Okay.
About this from the beginning. I don't think, that we can change anything about this because we have to get this done. I have a couple of questions. One, I noticed in the draft that I have gotten from you that you have a lot of comments out to the side, like confirm, et cetera, and then I have some of Todd's comments that he sent me that are in that format. So are you expecting everybody to put in their individual comments in that way? Or do you want us to try to collate those? Or how do you envision getting this?
That is a great question. Thank you for asking that. Preferably the latter. Preferably you're able to kind of work out those internal viewpoints and come to a conclusion of this person wanted X, this person wanted Y. So I think we're going to arrive right in the middle on this standard, and we'd like you to edit it in this manner. If you could do that, that would be awesome. But again, I realize this is a super, super tight timeline, and we might have to be a little bit more flexible, and I'm happy to be flexible with you all on that. I've definitely gone through really tight timelines like this before, where a planning commission will piecemeal out the draft and say, you just take the development standards, you just take the districts and what have you, and there's like 2 people working on each article. That's another tactic we could explore. It's totally up to you. But the latter would be the preferable method, where I'm getting that kind of direct advice, we've discussed it. This is the method the planning commission wants to take.
Well, and I realize that will take much less of your time to receive it that way. And of course, that keeps our costs down.
Right.
My concern, of course, is this is due to you a week from today.
Right.
My thought, and I'd like to hear from the rest of the commission on this, but my thought is that potentially, I'm hoping we can spend some time on it tonight. I don't know that we'll have it. At least we could go over some of your questions or comments and try to answer yours. But my thought, ladies and gentlemen, is that we might have another meeting on the night of the 18th, if that's possible for people, and try to firm up something so that we can send it to Austin all in one piece after we've had a week for all of us to look at it and maybe make our joint comments. Now, will I be able to see all the comments that everybody else has made, or will they have to send it directly to me, or is this working? Is it kind of going to you with everybody's separate comments, or how do I get all this?
Another great question. Totally up to you guys. What I've seen before, and I know there's a function in Word, although I don't know how to work it, is that you can do your own comments in your own draft. And then there's a function, maybe someone else knows, where you can consolidate all of those comments into one draft. So you can see like, oh, okay, 4 of us commented on this one provision, 3 of us wanted it one way and 1 the other. We'll go with, the 3 that wanted it this way, kind of a thing. But I actually don't know how to do that. I know it's possible because I've seen it before.
This is Nate. A couple of comments. I don't mind consolidating everyone's comments. I know we have a draft from Todd, that Mayor Dixon, that has some comments, and I have Austin's. Obviously, it sounds like Mike's are going to be on paper form that I'll have to go through. And so anyway, I can consolidate all into one draft. The other comment is next Tuesday, the 18th, is a board meeting. So I don't think that'll work for a meeting time. And also the board is having a workshop all day Tuesday. So Tuesday's pretty much shot for me anyway. Monday may be an option.
What is it? I could do the 17th. What's everybody else able to do on the night of the 17th, Monday?
Lamar, I'm out of town until the 19th late.
Okay.
I could do it on the 17th. Just about any time.
When do you leave, Lisa?
Tomorrow?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to be out for a week.
Okay. All right.
Can we meet on, well, Thursday would be the 20th. That'd be
Yeah,
2
what
days
about-
late.
What about the 20th? Rocco, Ann, Nate?
I imagine I can. I will.
I'll have to check and get back with you.
20th evening is not great for me.
Okay.
Okay. I think what we're going to have to do, and this is the issue, as he mentioned previously, a lot of the stuff takes a little bit of discussion amongst ourselves. And even if I have, 4 comments from various people that we've collated, it's not a decision. And sometimes, even though 3 people wanted one thing and 1 person wanted something else, when we have the discussion together, many times we come to a different conclusion when we understand why the one person had a different thought. And that's happened over and over in this process. Have we already advertised, Nate, our public meetings? Have those been advertised?
No.
Okay. When is that going to start? Have you arranged with the newspapers or?
We have not. We have some time before those November meetings, so we will do that soon.
All right, so, again, just practicalities with people's schedules. We were already planning to meet on the 25th. And that's when Austin was supposed to have a revised draft back to us.
Well, I think you could make that happen. And what we could do is start the public engagement, and there will be a revised draft along the way. It's not ideal. You'll start with the current draft for the public engagement. And then, a week into November, you'd get the revised draft based off your comments. That's an option to work with the timeline. So we'd basically bump out that third block to 10/25. I'd get you the revised draft as quickly as I can after that. But you might have to work with an intermediate, this current draft for your public engagement until I get you that revised draft. And you can just kind of caveat if you know the changes are coming or what have you. It's an option. It's not the best, but it's an option.
Okay, so public engagement. How are we doing public engagement, Nate? Are we planning public engagement on the 25th? Is that something we're going to advertise?
No, we were as to this point, we were thinking that the actual required public hearings were starting in November. So that was the plan, to publish for those meetings. But obviously if dates are going to change, we kind of need to know exactly what those are so we can publish the accurate information in the newspaper.
All right, so let's say that everybody has their comments into Nate and he compiles them by the 18th, right? Does that work? And then some of this, Austin, may just be a no-brainer, and he could send you the compiled comments.
Yeah.
Anything that looks controversial or strange or whatever, you can take action on the ones that are no-brainers,
Right.
and sort of leave the questionable ones for our meeting on the 25th. Would you be able to have something back if Nate got you the compiled comments by the 18th?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have something back to us by the 25th for our meeting that night?
Yeah, for sure. And what I can do, maybe this is the easiest solution, like you're saying, straightforward edits, just go ahead and make them. And if there are comments that aren't consistent with each other, then I will highlight those for discussion between the planning commission members. Hopefully you can then give me, answers shortly after your meeting. And then we'll turn a new draft around after that.
Okay.
So now I'm hearing probably 4 drafts, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Question,
And that first one's kind of preliminary.
do we send our comments to Austin or to Nate?
Nate, they go to Nate.
And can we just email you our comments and you'll just write them down and have them all?
Nate is going to.
Yeah, as long as they're very specific to the section and the
Right.
paragraph you're
Uh-huh.
referencing, then it's easy for me to insert comments,
Okay.
just as long as I know exactly
Exactly.
what paragraph you're talking about.
Yeah, okay.
So I have a question. So in that scenario, so the first required public hearing would then start early on the 18th of November, or let me look at
So it wouldn't actually be a public hearing because you wouldn't take any motions on the item. So
Okay.
what you would do is advertise it as a study session, open to the public, and
Okay.
ask for public comment. Sorry, it's a technicality, but you won't, no motions until 12:06. It's kind of
Okay.
important for legal reasons.
Okay, but
Cool.
does the work sessions, do those have to be published in the paper?
They don't, but I recommend you do, or else the public might not be aware of this project and the ability to comment on it.
Gotcha.
So my recommendation is to advertise as much as you can, like as in community spaces and what have you, to let folks know, hey, this project is going on and we want your feedback. This is an opportunity for you to give it to us, and then we'll, incorporate that feedback or as the town sees fit and what have you. The more public comments, always the better, I think, as far as the end product goes.
So that first meeting to advertise in the paper would be November 8th. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's our normal meeting
Cool.
night.
And
Okay.
I wasn't planning on being in those, Lamar, unless you wanted me
fine.
to. Okay,
That's fine. You don't need to.
okay,
Okay, so that's the advertised meeting, the first advertised meeting, 11/8, and then the deadline, we still send town comment back to Austin by the 11/18, and then we're still on track for the rest of it.
perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're still on track.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Anything
you.
else with timeline, or are we feeling comfortable?
Austin, sorry, another question about the publication or newspaper.
Yeah, sure.
If we publish in the newspaper, can we just put all the dates sort of in one, or do we need to do a separate newspaper publishing event for each meeting?
As long as it's within 60 days of the actual hearing. So let's see. 30, you're good. So yes, you can.
Okay. All right, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Good questions.
I think we've got that figured out. Feed Austin with your next.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, guys. That could be the hardest thing we do today. Who knows? Okay, so
Austin, can I ask one question then? And
Oh, sure.
to clarify, the work sessions with public comment are November 8th, and what other date? Or just one date? Do we have,
do you have another regular scheduled meeting in November? Or no?
We have been meeting the two generally, so it'd be the 8th and the 22nd, but that would be sort of after that deadline to submit
Right.
public comment to you, but I mean, we could still,
Let's bump that out. Because I'd love to give at least 2 chances for the public to give comments, so just in case, people are out of town or whatever. If you guys
Okay.
could schedule both, I think that would be awesome, just to see if we can get more public feedback on the draft. So let's bump out the town sends public comments to Austin to, let's see.
like the 25th is a Friday, the week
Yeah,
later. Is that,
no, that works. Let's try for that.
oh, that's Thanksgiving.
Oh.
But, so maybe the 28th, I mean, just to give one other, like an extra working day or something.
Yeah, let's try
Yeah.
that. And then, so that revised draft probably won't get to you on 11:30, but that's okay because we only need it before you post on 12/6. So I
Oh,
might,
post the agenda.
right?
Okay.
Which, do you typically do the Friday before?
I try to, but not always, doesn't always happen.
Okay, no worries. Well, I'll get it to you as soon as I can. And I'll send you an updated calendar, Lamar and Nate, after this.
Okay.
With
Because
everything.
I am getting confused here. Are you asked to have another public meeting on the 22nd of November? Is that what you're saying? We're
I
gonna,
would recommend it if
Okay.
you're able to, just so
Yeah.
you give at least 2. So basically when you're, these public discussions will allow for you to get hopefully all the big issues out of the way with the public. We can make those revisions before you get into a public hearing. And my hope, fingers crossed, is by the time we get to the adoption hearings, that it will be mostly smooth sailing because we've hopefully fixed a lot of the big potholes.
okay.
That's the goal.
That's the week of Thanksgiving. We had not been planning to meet, but we can certainly add that unless all my commissioners tell me they can't be on a Zoom or in person on the 22nd of November,
That's fair.
day before Thanksgiving. Anybody got an issue?
Nope.
Seeing
Okay.
no issues.
They're shaking their head. So Nate, you're too.
Yes, I think that's good for me.
Okay.
Okay, so 11:08 and 11:22 are the work sessions with public comment. Is that correct?
Yep.
And then, let's see, then instead of town sending public comment to Austin on the 18th, it'll be on the 22nd. Is that right? Or 28th, you said?
25th.
28th.
28th, a week, okay.
And then revised draft, I'll get to you before you post, hopefully 12/2, but I'll keep you guys appraised.
I have a question about this public comment.
Mhm.
So let's say that we have a public comment that the commissioners do not agree with.
Mhm.
Just because the public comment was made, do we have to make changes, or do we then make a decision about the input that we've received from the public, yay or nay? Is that our job?
Yeah, the latter, exactly. And so, you always get someone, or I always do, get someone who says like, this is ridiculous. You can't tell me what to do on my property. I don't want any land use rules. Like, obviously, the planning commission isn't going to just throw out all of the land use rules. So those kind of comments you kind of have to take with a grain of salt. But mostly what I found is that through the public comment process, you always end up with a better draft because they're catching little things and bringing little things to your attention that we might have missed. But of course, yeah, you are the policymakers. So you guys are the ones to decide what weight to give what comment. And then I take that feedback and revise the draft accordingly.
Okay. All right,
Excellent.
we have that discussed and open. So the rest of our calendar through December should work well.
Okay, cool.
Okay, one more thing. Back to the public comment. How is the public going to see this 60-page document?
So I would recommend posting it somewhere online if possible, but also
Okay.
providing hard copies for folks that aren't able to access the internet, just to make it as accessible as possible. So I typically do is leave like 10 copies at town hall and put in the posting. You can go
Okay.
grab a hard copy for free at town hall or something along those lines. And then say for those like who have internet access, you can also access it via Xlink. So it's however you guys prefer to go about that process, but I always try to give a couple of different ways to access if possible.
And that would be the PDF version.
Yes, PDF,
Obviously,
no
yeah, okay.
comments from me. So you'll want to take
Okay.
out my comments.
Right, so that, I think that PDF version is, that you sent, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay,
Okay, you guys are doing great. We're doing well. We're ready to move on to the substance. Thank you for sticking with it so far. Okay, Nate, if you would scroll down, please. Thank you, sir. Okay, so here is your list of articles. These are the 6 articles that make up the land use code. Today, we're going to focus on the middle 4. And before I get into them, I want to make some like kind of big general points with this process and some of the big changes you'll see and how I go about these types of revisions. So first, you guys told me that you wanted a really simplified land use code that's tailored to a mountain town. That is very much what I tried to do. So we went down from the draft of 110 pages down to 60 pages. With that level of consolidation, there's going to be a lot of changes from the previous draft you guys were familiar with. And so that means that similar provisions are consolidated, redundancies are removed, processes are simplified all throughout. So if a word is not necessary, then it's out of there, and same with a provision. And then you'll also see that this is a slightly reorganized and what I would consider a bit more modern approach to land use codes. So as I'm going through this, And as I'm looking for problem areas, I'm looking at the draft you had originally marked up and noting some of the suggestions that you all had made in that previous code. And so that's was my starting place number one. Number two was some of the suggestions I heard from all of you the first time we met. And I'll highlight some of those today and the direction we went based off those or that initial feedback. But of course, there's some prioritization here because of the quick timeline. And so when I'm issue spotting, when I'm going through your code, I'm looking for the big problem childs, and I'm doing probably, it's a spectrum of revisions. So I'd say on the far end, you will see some sections that are completely new that were largely replaced. So those are the sections we're going to highlight tonight, especially because I don't want you guys to be super surprised when you see something for the first time in the draft. So we're going to focus on that far side of the spectrum tonight. In the middle, you'll have minor edits and minor revisions that again get toward those big goals of simplification. And then on the other end, you have the things, provisions that are just carried forward, and those were few and far between, but I'll also highlight a couple of those today. And with that, we can move on to the districts. So I know you guys are already familiar with this table and you have reviewed it, which is awesome. And your revisions really helped refine, but I do still want to go over some of the big changes here and the mechanics. So when I'm looking at a district lineup, I'm asking myself, what are the differences between similar districts? And are those differences necessary to further a town goal or policy? And so with that in mind, you'll see a couple of consolidations here. The R1 district, as shown here, was a consolidation of your current R1 and 5A districts. Your MX1 district, as you can see here, the middle district on the table, is a consolidation of your current B and PF districts. And then you have, towards the middle of the spectrum, a couple of revisions to your PUD section, your open space district, which was formerly your PL district, so just a rename there for clarity, and your R2 district, which was largely carried forward. And then you'll also see a new district, and I want to talk about this one a little bit more. It's called the Downtown Village Overlay. And if you could go to the next slide, Nate. And I will leave plenty of time for questions at the end, but I've found it's helpful to get through it and see the big picture before we start discussing things. So this is new. This is your new Downtown Village Overlay. And the intent here is that you could use this overlay and plug and play throughout your downtown area. So it's an overlay, which means it's superimposed on your base zoning district. And I think that this will be a district that is fairly well received. And I think that for a couple of reasons. One, it is absolutely geared towards meeting the comprehensive plan goals, especially related to spurring additional development that is pedestrian oriented and high quality design. So that's the goal here. So it functions as a one-part sort of incentive and a one-part additional requirement. And so just to give you an example, this is a simplification and you'll see the full version in your draft, but as a simplification of what this district is trying to do. It would allow for a reduction in the required parking, and in exchange, you would have to require, or it would require, additional design requirements. And so those would be things like horizontal articulation, which you can see in that first bullet point there at the end, and changes in texture and or masonry patterns, or additional architectural elements that create this more pedestrian-oriented feel with high architectural value. So that's what we were trying to achieve here. And I wanted to highlight it because it's a little bit new, but I think it really gets at a lot of those comprehensive plan goals that I wasn't necessarily seeing activated as much in your previous draft. So hopefully it helps you get there. Next up, we'll talk about uses. Thank you, sir. So you guys will be fairly familiar with this structure. It's a very similar structure to what was in the previous draft, but you'll see a couple of changes here. You'll see a couple of consolidated uses for very similar uses. You'll see a definition for every use. The last thing you want is a lawsuit over a use not being defined, so we'll remove that. legal uncertainty right off the bat. And then you also see some use-specific standards, which are attempting to minimize impacts of certain uses. And I know you'll have questions on a couple of these uses and think, well, this just isn't a use that Green Mountain Falls will ever have. And you're probably right on a couple of those. And I would guess that I probably added those for legal reasons. For instance, I used to do what's called an analysis of impediments under the Fair Housing Act. And that is the requirement where you shouldn't impede fair housing to protected classes. And the first thing that HUD looks at, I know because I was one of these people for a while, is whether you allow manufactured home parks in any district in your municipality. And if you don't, then you kind of immediately get on HUD's bad side as far as impeding housing for lower income or protected classes. So you'll see some of those uses to try to protect you legally in those kinds of ways. And I'm happy to discuss any of those particular uses, but of course we can still decide, it just won't work for us and we want to go a different route, and we can have that conversation as well. But just wanted to get out in front of some of those uses you probably didn't expect to show up there.
Austin, can you go a little further about the legal? You said that we can get into trouble with HUD, but what do you mean? Briefly.
Yeah, so HUD requires under the FHAA that municipalities be randomly selected. So there's no way you could really know beforehand to determine whether they're impeding the goals of the Fair Housing Act. And if they are, then HUD has the latitude to enforce, meaning they have the latitude to either fine or bring suit against you. And one of the things they look to in those AIs, the analysis of impediments, is whether your uses are permitting any low income types of uses or any types of uses that are typically characteristic of a protected class of people. Does that kind of make sense? It's kind of a niche issue.
Thank you.
What you're saying is we have to have manufactured homes listed in our list, that we are not allowed to say we're not going to have them here.
I think it's a smart idea. You wouldn't be required to. However, if you were selected by HUD to undergo this analysis of impediments, then they would certainly knock you down for not having that type of use. We have a check, or not we, they have a checklist for certain types of things they're looking for in a land use code. And one of them is that manufactured home parks are allowed in at least one district. And so it's the easiest way to get HUD off your back, essentially, and say, like, we are allowing for fair housing types in our community. It's just, there's no market for it here. And so it's better, in my opinion, to give that answer rather than, well, we just don't want manufactured housing here, or what have you, or low income housing, whatever it is. So we can talk about that more. It's a kind of an in the weeds issue, but it's one of those uses you probably didn't expect to see, but I wanted to give you a little bit more reasoning of why some of those funky uses are popping up.
So Austin, when you have it listed, you have it R2 conditional.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of conditions are we able to put on it?
That's a great question. And there are use-specific standards attached to this use. So if you look to the right-hand column, if you can read that under use-specific standards, those are all hyperlinked. So you can click on that article 33A1, and it will take you to the use-specific standards, which are also grounded in HUD. So HUD basically says you should allow manufactured home parks, and you should allow them with these types of standards, and it's to prevent sort of disaster mitigation and like slums. And so they're pretty straightforward, but I'm happy to walk through those standards as well. But it would be with your conditional use permit, so it's a higher level approval when it be allowed by right. So if I can, I'll move on just because I don't want us to get dragged into the FHAA hole.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you for explaining why.
Yeah, no, and again, like it's all about risk tolerance. I have some communities who say like, yeah, that's fine. We'll allow HUD to fight us on it. And, that's totally fine as well. You've got lawyers. Okay, on to procedures. So this is the last article I'm going to go through today. And Honestly, there were a ton of changes here. I didn't expect to spend so much time in the procedures chapter as I did, but there was probably more changes in this article than any other, and I probably spent more time here. And so I want to give you a little bit of the reasoning of why that happened. I found a lot of procedures sort of complicated to understand, quite frankly. And then when I would go through them, for instance, like your current minor subdivision process, I would go through it, and then at the end, I would still be left wondering, but wait, what types of applications are actually eligible here? And so I tried to summarize that up, and I tried to make that a little bit more clear. And again, it could have just been my misunderstanding. Maybe it was perfectly clear, but I hope that this gets you where you want to go. So just giving a quick overview of 3 of the procedures that changed the most. So the first is subdivision. So I consolidated down your various subdivision procedures that were in the previous draft into 2 types of procedures. One is minor and one is major. So your minor subdivision will be for lot line adjustments, vacations, condominiums, and minor and technical changes to a plat, so like corrections to a plat. Your major is every other type of division of land. So we're making sure that we capture all types of subdivisions within those 2 buckets. Next, a lot of changes in historic preservation. And I know this can be a touchy issue, so I'm completely ready to walk it back if that is the direction y'all give me. But I again found it a little bit confusing, particularly your designation process and your certificate of approval procedures. And so again, I worked at trying to simplify those, trying to make them as concise as possible. You'll see they're way, way shorter than they were in your previous draft, I think by like a couple of pages. And so if you want that level of detail, then we can, again, pull it back and add a little bit more. I'm happy to do that. But again, I took really seriously the direction of making this a very simple mountain town code. I think this is a way to get there, but happy to discuss. And the last is a new procedure. This is a popular procedure to improve efficiency in modern land use codes, but I just wanted to explain it very quickly. It's called the minor modification process. It acts very similar to a variance, but it's a little bit different. You bring your minor modification with your underlying application, and it's only eligible if you're proposing a 10% or less deviation from a development standard. So let me give you an example, making up completely random numbers. I'm in, let's say, a residential district, and my setback is supposedly 10 feet for the front property line. I'm building a single family dwelling, which requires a site plan. I could put on that site plan that I'm requesting a 1-foot variance. So I'm going to build 9 feet setback instead of 10. And I would just put that right on my site plan, the underlying application. And then when it comes to the town for review, the town would not only look at the site plan criteria, but they would say, oh wait, this also includes a minor modification. So we've also got to look at the minor modification criteria, which would include that the reason for the minor modification isn't something that they created. So perhaps there's a slope there, and it would make it much more advantageous to build in a slightly different way. But again, only a 10% modification. So it's like a mini variance, but it's not a separate application. It comes with the underlying application. I'm happy to take any questions on that, but wanted to get out in front of that one. Wow, I just talked for a long time. Okay, taking a step back, any questions on the big stuff I covered today? And I am going to jump over to my draft just to take notes while you all are talking, but please fire away.
I have a question. This is Ann.
Go ahead, Ann.
On the, excuse me, on the appeal process, you don't mention the Board of Adjustment anymore. And we do have that in law.
So that is one of my comments in your draft, and I'm glad you brought that up. I thought that was the case, but I wasn't sure if your planning commission was acting as your Board of Adjustment. So you're telling me that is not the case. It's a completely separate body.
We don't have it defined. We haven't had it populated for years. So I think the decision needs to be made on whether it will exist or some other body will act as it.
Okay.
One thing, Austin, that, and I could be really wrong on this, but I believe it's state law that you have to have one.
So It is state law that you have to have a board of adjustment, but
Mhm.
what's becoming more common is that you just say your planning commission acts as your board of adjustment, and you just plug that right into your definition. So when you define planning commission, you say, you know, blah, blah, blah body of the town also acts as the board of adjustment for all legal purposes. And so
So
that's
if-
what meets your legal or your state standard right there. You checked that box and all things kind of remain the same.
So if you were denied a variance by the planning commission, you could reconvene and change your mind
No, so that's where the tricky
as the
part
Board of
comes.
Adjustment.
That's where the tricky part comes. So the one body would act the same. So for instance, I was in one of these meetings today. And so if you act on a previous application, you wouldn't be the appeal body in that case. It would go to the higher level body. So in this case, it would be the Board of Trustees. So this morning I was in a hearing just for that. It was a dual planning commission board of adjustment in Winter Park. Their planning commission acts as their board of adjustment. The planning commission made the initial decision on the variance and they denied the variance. Normally for most applications, you would go up to your board of adjustment. But in this case, because the planning commission was the last decision maker, the appeal goes up to the town board.
Oh, it goes back to the trustees.
That's
You don't
correct.
have, you don't, because before that you had to sue, you had to go to court.
Right. And the way this works today is that Board of Trustees would be the final decision maker, and you'd have to exhaust your local remedies before you can bring a 106 challenge, which is the challenge to district court that you violated your land use code. And I recommend doing that way, although we can totally draft it a different way, up to, you know, whatever works best for you guys, but it insulates you just an extra layer from suits.
Austin, I think that's a good idea to do it that way.
Just for clarification, this is Rocco. In the spring of 2020, the trustees did approve a resolution for boards and committees, and they did establish a board of adjustment. So it hasn't been populated,
Okay.
but it sounds to me like the current trustees will have to examine that issue and maybe remove the board of adjustment if that's no longer going to happen.
Or, Austin, can we just, as you recommended, say, use the methodology that you just described? And even though our board, BOT, has put a board of adjustment in place, could it still be what you just recommended, or do we have to go back to BOT and get rid of that?
Yep. So when we get to the point of actually writing the adoption ordinance to which this whole land use code will be attached, we'll have pretty specific language about what is being repealed and what applies in the case of any types of contradictions. So we'll try to head that off in the adoption ordinance. But yes, exactly.
Good. That'll
Great
be-
questions.
That'll be nice to handle that all at one time. That'd be good. What else? Commissioners?
So
Rocco?
Lamar, this is Rocco. Article 5, I had an issue, I guess the biggest issue I had with the current draft land use code, and I'm stepping in the middle of the process because this was started by the previous planning commission. References to a planning director. We don't have a planning director. I know that we had attempted to hire one. That hasn't happened. I don't personally think we need one, but that's a philosophy discussion among the planning commission, I believe. Also with town staff about the need and if that's going to happen. And that would substantially change parts of the code, specifically Article 5.
Yeah, definitely. I think, Nate, do you currently act as the planning director to like ensure applications are complete or no?
I mean, I do the job. That's not my title, but
Okay.
yeah.
So we can, that's definitely a big one, and definitely will require quite a bit of reworking if the decision is no planning director. But again, happy to go either way, but yeah, that's a big one that would be good for me to know early.
So if we don't have a planning director, what do you recommend, and how would you have to rework all this?
Then the planning commission gets a ton more work essentially. And you hear a whole lot more applications. And I would rework the appeal process too a bit. I would rework a lot of the procedures. I think a lot of the mechanics would still kind of stay the same, but you'd get rid of a lot of those administrative functions and you'd delegate them to the planning commission. So your plate just got a lot bigger essentially.
So the way we've talked about it in the past is basically like town manager or designee. I think the town's staff goal is to
Okay.
either have a planning, not a director, but a planning technician on like a part-time planner on staff, or we've also begun exploring just options of contract planner. So I think in either case, I think we would, the town staff, and Becky can correct me if I'm wrong, but would have a goal of either having a part-time planner or a planning contractor that basically intakes, all the applications.
So Nate, I think that's a great way to do it. Just kind of replace planning director with town manager and then write in the definitions that it could be their designee, which can be this planning technician.
Yeah, that's the way we've talked about it in the past.
Okay.
Fairly
Is
recently.
is Becky on this call or in the room?
Yeah, so we've done similar. We've looked at other things that were really kind of that same way, and it ends up being, a designee of the town.
Okay. Awesome.
Unless planning commission wants to do a lot of work, like she said, or he said, I'm sorry.
Well, I guess the question is this budgeted? The Planning
It
director?
has
position?
been for the
Is
last,
it in the current
couple of
draft?
years.
Is it in the current draft 2023 budget?
yes.
I think what our overall goal with this ends up being is that we have a land use code that is adaptable to whatever situation the town is in staffing wise. And so I think doing it that way to where, we do have that person or their designee as being that responsible party for doing that that initial administrative work with the support of the planning commission, I think ends up being the best of all worlds.
Well said.
Austin, is it possible to write this in a cascading fashion so that it's town manager? If there's no town manager, it's the planner. If there's no planner, then it's the planning commission, just so we don't have to redo code depending on who we've hired and who we want to hire or who we aren't able to hire or whatever the situation is.
Yes, absolutely. I will plan to make that revision in this next draft.
Just so we're flexible.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely agree.
In any case, if the town has land use code, it needs someone to work it. So either way, there's going to be a cost associated with that. So unless, like you said, Austin, the planning commission wishes to take on that role.
Or by default has to.
Okay. And is there any way I can just see like all the screens or all the faces on my screen? I just see the slide really big. Maybe that's on my end and I don't know how to fix it.
Can you see my face? I'm about the only face here because
Oh,
everybody
okay.
else has their
So-
camera turned off.
So
Our
no worries
audio-
with mine.
Our audio is room audio, so you should just see a video of the table with 3 commissioners at it.
I see it, but it's super tiny.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if, okay, that's
Can't
fine.
really do much about that.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
What else? Lisa, Rocco?
I guess just the last comment I have is administrative. Can you please insert page numbers at the bottom of each page?
Yep, that's a good thing to do. Sorry about that. I didn't even realize I forgot to put the footers in there.
Well, they're on my copy,
Not mine.
my computerized copy, the page numbers, but no, otherwise, no.
I will put those footers in there. That was my mistake. And I should note on that, Same kind of vein, that the legal assistant we have for the firm will be going through this entire code and hopefully cleaning up any grammar issues, typos, those kind of things. And our firm offers that at no charge. So she'll be slowly working through those things. So if you see any small things, definitely flag them, but hopefully the legal assistant will also get them.
I know, Lisa, you have Mike's comments. I have Todd's comments. Are there any of those that we want to?
Well, I flipped through his comments real quickly, and there's just that planning director issue is circled a million times. And a lot of questions, you know, what does this mean? And yeah, the historic preservation. So it's kind of minutia, a little bit more minutia.
Do we have definitions at the end yet?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I didn't make it that far.
I have another little note to myself. Could I ask him?
Please, Ann, go ahead.
Under the chapter 16, you know, we're going to get rid of that, right? The old part. I was wondering if public land in the old code in chapter 16, is that the same as open spaces in the new code?
It is. And the reason I broadened that out, I might have added a footnote on it, but I'm not 100% positive, is that public land is sort of a misnomer in that it makes you believe that open space can only be held by a governmental entity, which isn't true. Private entities can also own open space. And of course, public entities like the town can require open space be held by private enterprises. And so that's why I opened it up to make sure that you guys still have that tool. If you're seeing a development and you want to require open space on that private land, you have the ability to do so.
Well, the thing that I'll just ask you this, I'm not trying to make trouble or anything, but
No worries.
when the land was bought on the other side of Red Devil, and also Red Devil, horse rescue is planned there. And the contract with the town says that large animals shall be allowed which shall preserve the open space, view sheds, and so forth. And the old code will apply, not the new one. So that's already in the contract. Does that still goes forward? That we can't change what they would do?
Yep, that's a great question. And we had that off in that first article, which I didn't cover today, in a section called transition provisions. And so it says in part under a subsection that is titled development agreements or prior approvals, I think, prior approvals. And it basically states, if you have a prior approval under the previous code, that is valid, and this code does not amend or redact any part of that. So everything that was approved under any prior code before this code hopefully gets adopted, this code won't be amending or changing, and all of those contracts, development agreements, what have you, conditional uses are all still legal. They're all still legal, even if they're non-conforming.
Okay, so the setbacks and things of the new code would not apply.
That's correct. Yeah, it would only apply to new development going forward. But I will say I try to be really conscious about non-conformities and limiting them. And I don't anticipate many or hopefully any non-conformities being created with this code. I think what we've tried to do is make it a lot more flexible and lenient.
Right. That's good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Great question.
I've got a question. This is
ahead.
Lisa.
Go ahead.
Back to table 3.1, you know, we talked about the manufactured home park, and it was, there was an asterisk there referring to Article 3.3. Down below, adult entertainment looks the same. Is that also HUD required? Are we required to have that? Because I'm very curious. For like expression of your own sexuality or something, or what?
That is a great question. I'll try not to get in a tangent on this one because the legal issues here are super interesting. But it is a legal issue, and that is why we added it. And it's not
Okay,
under HUD, it's under the Equal Protection Clause. I know
Okay.
this isn't what we're talking about tonight, but just really quick, because I think it's interesting. It's interesting to know the way the suit worked, and it was back in the 70s, was saying like, hey, you can't regulate me, adult, whatever it's called, retail store, differently than the retail store across the street. I have the same impacts on land use. And the United States Supreme Court said, you know what, you're right. You must give allowances to those types of entities, just as you would a typical retail entity. And you need to instead regulate on the land use impacts and not implicate free speech. And so this is the way that land use attorneys have gone about it to try to bridge that gap, to ensure that you make that legal, you check that legal box while still not allowing, you know, adult film stores or whatever else everywhere you want, and still, you know, requiring the highest level of approval you can. So this is, I think, as stringent as you can make it while still confining within the law. And I will say again, it always depends on legal tolerance. I have clients who say, we don't care, we'll wait till we get sued. So you could remove it,
Oh.
wait till you get sued.
Austin, this is Rocco. I like the way that you kind of hemmed in the adult entertainment. They have to be 750 feet away from places of worship and also away from the R1 properties. So I don't see any place in town where they could meet that.
And that's the goal, although, you know, don't tell people that. But great question. You guys know I'm a land use nerd, so I'll talk about this stuff all day. Got to cut me off.
Well, I just, to kind of follow on with Ann's question about grandfathering, when I look at Article 1, Paragraph 1, at the very front there of the chapter, can you explain that to me? Because when I see the word like existing, must be maintained in accordance with the provision of this land use code. Can you explain that? Is that a grandfather clause in some way?
It is, and so, so you're looking at the very first provision here under applicability, is that right?
yes,
So this is saying that after the effective date of the land use code, you must follow the land use code, but huge exception. If you got your approval before the effective date of this land use code, then you follow the approval to which was granted to you, if that makes sense. So you bought your single family dwelling, and let's say your setback at the time was only 5 feet and we're making it 10 feet, you still follow that 5 feet. The 10 feet doesn't apply to you. But again, huge point here is that I really try hard not to have that scenario happen. I really try hard to ensure that this code doesn't create those nonconformities. But great question. And did I answer your question?
You've answered the question, but just the way I read it, is there a way that you can simplify that?
Oh, I'm sure I could. Yeah,
Clarify.
I'll add that to my list. It's a block paragraph, which is a pet peeve of mine, but you know, old habits.
Just below adult entertainment, we've got the animal shelter. Todd's question was, does this include the rescue horses?
Does it include the what?
The rescue horses that we've talked about that are going to be in the open space.
So likely not. I would need to see how that facility is actually going to be run, but an animal shelter is more geared towards, I'm just looking at the definition. Oh, you know what? Yes, it could. I thought I limited it based off types of animals, but I did not. So it's all types of animals fall under animal shelter. So yes, it could fall under that definition, but it could also probably fall under, well, first it would be granted under its prior approval. So I wouldn't even have to look to this code, but I'm betting it falls under. Let me just check one thing. It's an open space. Right, so it could also fall under parks and open space likely, which is a super broad definition that allows you guys to have that flexibility of kind of how you define open space. And it could, of course, be like grazing animals and what have you.
That's sort of what we've been thinking is that would go in the open space as
So I
well.
think you'd have the flexibility to do either right now, and I can tighten those up however you'd like me to.
Well, just keep in mind that there is the rescue horse situation.
Okay.
You know, you never know if they might end up in a different piece of land than they thought they would. You know, you never know. So
Right. Okay.
we do want that.
Mar, based on our previous meeting, we had included a column for, or a row for barn sheds and outbuildings. I don't see that in this table.
I'm glad you brought that up. That was one I meant to talk about. I would house that all under one use, which is accessory structure, I believe. Let me find it. Just one sec. Unless, I mean, I can always get more specified. I tend to go broader at first until I hear otherwise. But trying to see where I put this provision.
Well, and that's a good segue to the accessory dwelling units, which I think we had a lot of confusion around. If you can talk about that as well.
Let's see.
Dwelling units, I don't have the page number. But
Oh, you know what? I need to add that to the definition. So great comment. I will adjust that. So I'll add that to your accessory uses list and also define it to include all of those uses you mentioned.
And we also had that as conditional in open space.
Right, okay. To uses list. Okay.
what is this section E, accessory uses and structures and temporary uses, accessory dwelling unit?
Mhm.
Is an accessory dwelling unit?
What is an accessory dwelling unit?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a grandmother's flat is what they used to call them. And so often you see them as like a unit above a garage. Or you could have your own like separate cottage on your property. And there are use specific standards with that too, basically ensuring that it's accessory in nature. Good question.
Can you remember, I can remember if we were wanting to allow accessory dwelling units or not.
I would have to look back on my notes. I definitely could have got it wrong. So please let me know.
I don't know, with the accessory dwelling unit having additional off-street parking space, that may pretty much take care of it. I don't know.
Okay, anything else tonight? I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time. And I know we'll have several opportunities to go through this exercise, which I'm excited about, but anything else that I should know tonight? Feeling okay, pretty good? Is this heading in the right direction, we think?
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Okay.
It's a little overwhelming.
Hopefully less overwhelming than 110 pages, but still.
Definitely.
Okay.
So Austin, this is Lisa again. Can I, as we go through this, we've gone through so many of these the other codes and revisions of the codes that we've looked at. We kind of get, we start to drown in these little minutia.
Right.
Can you kind of give some advice on the best way to sort of look at this and keep a high eye or high level? And I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I'd say first level thing is policy considerations above all else. So just like Lamar was stating, do you want to allow accessory dwelling units? Is that going to be a huge political fight? If it is, then that's something we need to look at really closely and spend a lot of time on. And then like the smaller minutia of, hold on, you're calling that a minor subdivision. We want that to be called a major subdivision. I wouldn't spend too much time on those. Just write a quick comment and, we'll get it taken care of and redrafted. But I would say those kind of smaller things aren't worth spending a ton of your time on, but the big policy considerations, especially when they can become political, are definitely the ones worth focusing on. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
Well, and maybe you could sort of highlight some of those that we may not be aware of as well.
Yeah, I'd
That
say
could
the
be
ones,
hot, you know, I mean, obviously the dwelling units and the rentals and all that, but is there anything else that we need to kind of
the
be
big
wary of, I
ones
guess?
we covered today.
Okay.
I think hopefully this draft is going to be a good thing for most property owners. They're going to see more flexibility. They're going to see streamlined procedures. They're hopefully going to spend less money, get through the process more quickly, or at the very least be denied very quickly and know that what they're attempting to do isn't allowed. So hopefully it makes the answer they're looking for a little bit quicker to get to. That's the big goal here. And so hopefully we won't have a ton of those sticking points, especially with how honestly, you guys are much more in tuned and organized than a lot of the folks I work with. And I think that's going to help as well, because it seems like most of y'all are already on the same page. A lot of times I'll fight over these things internally. And luckily we haven't really had that so much yet. And that's where a lot of the time kind of gets baked away. So like something like that maybe isn't that controversial to a lot of people, like recreational vehicle parking. That I've seen that become a huge issue. And I've seen commissioners get so mad at each other based off whether they allow it in their district or they don't allow it in their district. And so it seems like you guys are taking an awesome approach, honestly, already with thinking about this, with the stuff that's actually going to have the biggest impacts. Not to say that that can't have an impact, it can. But,
One more question, Austin. In the R1 low density residential, I think I sent you a note about how we still wanted to keep different setbacks for different size lots. Is that covered here somewhere?
it is not. I actually kicked it back to you in a question in the Word doc. So I'm hoping that you might respond to that question and then I can tailor it from there. I wasn't sure if you meant that you wanted to keep your original 5A standards or if it was something different.
I think we wanted to keep those original standards. It doesn't mean that we couldn't just still have the R1, but maybe there's some way within the R1 that you could have the different size lots and setbacks included, if that makes sense.
So tell me what we're getting after. Do we want a more rural district, which you don't really have in this lineup right now? A more lot size kind of agricultural district or forestry kind of district?
What would the difference be in just a larger city lot with a larger setback as opposed to calling it rural or agricultural? Would that mean that you would have animals on it? Would it mean that you would have hothouse on it? What would that mean?
So that's exactly how I think about it, is really what differences in practice are we achieving by keeping both the 5A and the R1, both of your current districts. And when I look at that, I think that those kind of uses can still be allowed on a small lot size. And that's why I ended up consolidating them, because even if you have, a couple of goats or whatever on your property, I think that the use specific standards are there to minimize the impacts. And you also always have your nuisance laws as a backstop to that. And so in my head, I saw them similar enough that you could achieve both uses on those smaller lot sizes. And that's why I ended up consolidating. But if what you're telling me is that you don't feel that way, that's not the case in the town, we can absolutely add back in a more large rural residential district.
Well, I agree with everything you just said. Usage, absolutely, it's all the same. I think the issue for us was that we don't want this half-acre lot that has only whatever our 5 feet or whatever setback. We don't want these like mansion built with almost zero lot line practically.
Okay.
This huge structure over a gigantic lot.
Right.
We wanted the big issue was the setbacks, really, so that
Okay.
we keep the character of the town where you don't, like I said, we don't want huge McMansions built.
So what if we did on lots greater than, I'll have to think about it, like a quarter acre, we do an increased setback, something like. along
Hey,
those
Lamar,
lines.
this is Rocco. I'm wondering if this isn't addressed later when you talk about you have the permeability of the soil and all that. I think that accounts for not disrupting a lot of the lot. Is that true, Austin? Later in the code?
Definitely. And again, that was based off your guys' feedback on our initial meeting of something to prioritize. So definitely do take a look at those development standards, specifically the ones you just mentioned regarding sensitive lands. Yes, that is definitely what it is trying to achieve, but also note the extra flexibility it gives you. It's combining both of your comments to try to avoid sensitive lands. So if it means that I've got sensitive lands on 60% on the back of my parcel, I'm allowed to scooch up my building right up close to that front lot line to avoid building in the sensitive lands. And so it does go both ways. If you want it to like have a little bit more setback in the front for those larger lots, I think we could probably still make it work. Both those goals, but
This is Nate. I think one other concern with regarding setbacks is for fire mitigation purposes and not having structures in the future that are 10 feet apart from each other on these small lots, and with the risk of fire. That was definitely part of the discussion. So I think just that comment for the commission.
Yes, thank you, Nate. That was also part of our discussion.
and you will see those fairly creative, the most creative I've gotten with my wildfire protection standards. Just looking at your comp plan, so please do give those a look as well and let me know if that's going to work.
Thank you.
So it sounds like maybe we do want to tailor the setbacks for R1 a little bit more and increase or why don't I throw out an option in the next draft for larger setbacks for R1? And then you guys can kind of mull it over in the next coming weeks. Does that sound all right? Yeah, okay,
It's fine, because it is intended to be low density.
right. Okay, cool.
Is there a way, right now we have, the way it's defined now is it's actual separate zone codes, but is there a way to differentiate setbacks within one zone code based on square footage the way we do it now, only just within one zone code?
Yep, so I'll do it right in your dimensional standards table. So well, you'll see it, but yeah, I'll add another row, I'll split the cell, and then you'll have the differing standards depending on the trigger, which sounds like it's going to be lot size. So different standards depending on how big the lot is in R1. So different setbacks requirements depending on how big your lot is in R1. Does that make sense, Nate, or did I answer your
Yeah.
question? Okay,
Yeah.
Cool.
And that's really where the commissioners landed in our last meeting, is we kind of like to keep the same or similar setbacks that we had had.
Okay, I know that was a big change for sure.
Yeah.
So I'll bring it back a little bit and then have you guys kind of just decide if that's about right. And again, the nice thing is we have like 4 drafts or 4 revision drafts. So we've got time to kind of keep tailoring until we get it right.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll give you something new to look at in this next draft.
Sounds great. All right, commissioners, anybody else? Questions, comments?
Should, Lamar, we throw
Yes.
away all the old stuff that we've got? I've got so many papers. I don't know what to keep.
And
I think
you can keep or throw away whatever you want to. I'm keeping notes from our previous meetings just so I can.
Yeah, just that is enough.
Yeah, but whatever you like.
Okay, thank you.
And
Anybody
then,
else?
or sorry, Lamar.
Go ahead, Austin.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, are you getting all the billing information you need? Or should I talk to our office manager?
Are you not getting paid, Austin?
Oh, no, I don't deal with any of that stuff. I got no idea. I'm still getting paid, but I know you guys are asking for like more kind of detailed reports, and that's my office manager, not me. I just wanted to make sure that's still happening.
Becky
think-
and Nate, are y'all getting what you need from them?
We receive a monthly statement, and so that's our timeline. So I think after we discuss, after this, we're going to discuss the just the current financials, where we're at with everything, and then if the commission wants to see more details based on that discussion, then or more frequent update, I should say. But I think, the details in the invoices are great and all that. So
Okay, cool.
as far as I'm concerned, it's good. It's just a matter of if the commission needs more frequent updates. That seems to be the only delay from your office. I mean, we can, email and request, but it's that's kind of it's time for everybody on that. So
I can talk to our office manager though if you need something, and I'm sure we can speed that up. So just let me know,
Okay.
Nate.
Okay, thank you.
Lisa, have you got something?
No, I was just waving goodbye to the participants from the public that were here and like making them feel good about coming.
All right, if there's no other question or comment, let's let Austin go. Speaking of money. And,
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Austin. This is super exciting
Thank
and
you.
a big
Austin.
relief, big relief.
Bye.
Thanks, Austin.
guys.
We'll get back with you. Okay, so it is now nearly 8. I don't know how we would all like to proceed with this, if we sort of want to go together through this and talk about it, or just let everybody continue on an individual basis, getting things to Nate, or if there's anything further that y'all feel like is sort of controversial or you don't understand or whatever.
All right, that's Lisa. I think we picked up different things as we've been going through. Different things have more, mean more to different commissioners. And so as I'm thinking about previous things we've discussed, oh yeah, we did discuss that, but that wasn't as important to me and it didn't go in my head. I wish there was a little outline of that that more concisely. My notes aren't all that great. I went through and I was trying to follow things that we should sort of be, okay, let's pay attention to. Did we lose something here with this big change? I don't know. I really like, 6 little parts, and I like the organization of it. That seems pretty cool. And unless I were to lay out and just, look at every page and every, I wouldn't know like what he took out and what he put in. I'm not going to go through it to that minutia at all.
Well,
I'm going to have to trust him on that.
yeah, I think it's hard to get a red line version really where he can show us where he took it, what he took out and put in, because he completely reworked this. So,
Right.
And I didn't look through the Word. I printed the PDF and I didn't look through the Word document that was linked. And does he have comments all through that?
yes, he does.
Ah, okay. Then we need to look
Oh.
through.
I haven't seen that, I guess.
It was at the bottom. Yeah, there was, and I was afraid to, that I would alter it in some way. I'm like Nate. I need to learn how to make those comments on a Word document or a Google Doc. I don't know how. I've messed up a lot of them.
If Nate wants to share his screen, I can share my screen with you and kind of show you.
Okay. I'm sure there's just a few little clicks that you need to do and I could figure it out.
I did think, this is Ann Lamar. I was glad that Lisa brought up the fact about law. The Fair Housing Act, the equitable things that we must be aware of in this day and age are very important, because we
Absolutely.
sure don't want to get sued for being too exclusive or whatever it may be.
Nate, am I able to share my screen? It says I can't.
I just updated the setting. I think you should be able to.
Oh, yeah, now I can. All right.
So now it's a matter of getting, hold on, I need to figure out how to get this projected here. Okay, we're up on the projector.
Okay, so right over here, you see all Austin's comments, which is going to be something we will need to look at because he's got questions here. We can start going through that tonight if you want. And then when you want to make a comment, you just go over here and
So what is it you're hitting? It's a little gold box or something?
see my cursor
Yeah.
right there.
And what does it say? It's blurry, hard for us to see. Is there text beside it in white?
Yeah, it says comment.
Ah, okay.
It's a little text box that should allow you to comment on it. And I think you probably not like need to pick a spot and then, you can make a comment about this exact.
So you touch, okay, you hit the icon and then go back over to what, like if you want to add something,
Yeah, if I want to make a comment on.
applicability.
Yeah, I just put my cursor there and hit the comment button. Should be able to, that should work. And I can also hit Austin's comment here and add a reply like I
Ah, okay.
or
Mhm.
this one. I'm sure what
It'd be good if we could all do it, but
this
yeah.
is.
it's in the Word document though.
Yes.
It's beside the PDF. There's 3 of them. Yeah.
So it highlights what he's focusing on. And I think, good question. What does this mean? These were from our notes. I think we were willing to have 0 lot line as, space there, setback on the sides.
Yeah.
This area, as long as they had a firewall. We want 5 feet or 0 feet with the firewall. Because in our commercial area, we have
Right. Yeah.
side by side. So
Yeah. I remember that discussion.
like I can answer that and explain what that means. And see, when I click his, it just takes me right to that. Right there.
Oh, okay. It highlights it. Yeah.
Like
Okay.
this. And then he has the page here. And the page numbers, I'm going to show you on my cursor where it is. Like this is page 14 out of 60.
Mm-hmm.
So you can tell what the page number is. So
Yeah. It just isn't on the printed. Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
So Lamar, I'm wondering if we figure out how much time we want to allocate to going through this product tonight and then just proceed with that amount of time.
I think that's great. What would you recommend, Rocco?
At least 30 minutes.
That 30 minutes is fine. Y'all have specific, do we want to jump around or do we just kind of want to start at the,
Maybe just start at the beginning, and if people have comments, they can make comments page by page.
so there he asked for a date when this is going to be effective. If this is passed, Nate, by the end of December, effective January 1 makes sense to me. What do y'all think?
We'll have to double check. I think it's 30 days after the last meeting that it's adopted or approved by the board.
So it's December 6th, right?
Yeah.
Oh, but then the board.
January
has to-
6th or
they'll be
7th or
presented to
whatever.
you guys. So that'd be the next week.
The
I think.
board approved, so it's the 13th, yeah,
Mhm,
so
the
it'd be
next
at
week.
least January 13th.
Yeah.
So like, that's an example, I can handle that. Let's see here. Looks like he had something higher up.
And if you could just shout out what you're, it's really small and hard to read for us.
I wrote 30 days after.
No,
and-
yeah, I just meant more his questions. I can't even read. I got what you wrote, the 30 days, but
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Number 5B, he just took out the word "the," I think. I don't think that there's any question there.
Very first. Right here.
So I'm just gonna jump down to all his questions, because I think that's a good thing for us to cover.
Yeah,
And we've already covered this one.
and you could put the examples such as different use, the buildings downtown. Like one's a restaurant, one's a shop, one's a bar.
The last time, didn't we change, now maybe I'm on the wrong page, but the lot sizes on R2, didn't we change it back to 20,000 or something?
Yeah, I think we did.
And that doesn't show on that. Or maybe it does on your remarks. I can't read it either.
He said, okay, are you asking about?
In the table under R2, it says that lot area 4,000.
Yeah.
And we had changed it. It was much larger, like to 20,000, I thought, or we
This is
thought,
2,000. This is only 4,000.
right. Like if you're going to build a condo or something, that's little.
That would be, I think we kind of wanted it to stay small, as I recall, but let me, and I can send y'all all my notes again. I think I copied all of you with my notes to him. Let me move this over. And find what I sent.
Current code has R2 as 20,000 minimum. I think that's what we talked about.
Here. I don't know if y'all can see that, but these are the notes that I sent him. I told him how that we wanted to keep our minimum, our different size lots, and the larger, older setbacks. I don't show a change on this 4,000. Now we did drop the mixed use to 1,500 instead of 2,500 square feet.
Was that a maximum? At 20,000, not a minute, I don't know.
Those are all minimum.
Okay.
So obviously it can be much larger. That's just the minimum. And he did change this one.
Mhm. Okay.
But the accessory structures, I had sent him barns and sheds, 25-foot space allowed all around and 25 feet high as well. And he did make those changes for the accessory structures. So I'm just going through his, I'm putting same as above on this one. On this one, he asks, do we currently require public improvement agreements? And at what stage do we require that? Nate, can you answer that?
No, I haven't dealt with a full subdivision, thank goodness.
Do we know if we require that?
What's the term again? Public agreement?
Public improvement agreements.
Just went ahead and did it, didn't you? We didn't require the public to make a new subdivision for the brewery.
That was a minor subdivision.
Oh,
Minor,
that's
not a major.
minor. Oh, sorry.
And so we do, it does say, I don't see any mention of, there's only one mention of that term in our current code, and it's a different context. So I don't know. I know at some point with a major subdivision, there has to be public improvements such as roads that are built as part of the subdivision have to be turned over to the town's ownership essentially at some point. So I don't know. It's probably what that is talking about, but I don't know any more than that.
So the answer to this is we currently do not require public improvement agreements. So I'm going to say no on that. I think that's the accurate answer, right?
I guess, unless I find something else here.
This next one is alleys are permitted and encouraged and shall be dedicated to the town. B. So his question is, really? All alleys are dedicated to the town, even in a private subdivision? Do we have any alleys?
Yeah, we got alleys.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's on the east side.
So does that mean that dedicated to the town, first of all, are they a minimum width of 20 feet? And being dedicated to the town, does that mean that's right of way, or does it mean the town owns it? Or what does it mean to be dedicated to the town?
Yeah, usually a right of way is dedicated after a subdivision is created. So the whatever minimum standard, if it's an alley or a street, then that's what that public improvement is, that is then dedicated to the town. So the town is responsible for maintenance and all that good stuff. There's the only, I mean, we have platted alleys all over the place. Most of them aren't developed, but there is one over by, I think it's between Pine and Spruce.
Mhm.
There's an alley that goes through the middle there. I think that's really the only kind of, I don't know, stereotypical alley that I can think of in town, but
Is the town maintaining that alley, and does the town want to maintain it?
I don't know the answer to that. I think they probably do maintain it when necessary, but I don't know for sure.
So we really don't have many alleys. The few that we do we want them to be a minimum width of 20 feet? And do we want them to be dedicated to the town?
20 feet is that minimum international fire code width that Chief Murphy referenced. So yes, I think that's good and
Mhm.
probably should be public.
Mhm. Yeah.
Answer that, yes.
Yeah, this verbiage came from Austin, right? It wasn't, I don't think it was in a previous, I never saw it in a previous document. What
Yeah,
does
I
it
think
mean?
this
It's
draft,
new. Yeah.
yeah, I don't think he really kept anything from
Mhm.
any other previous.
Well, and that's a fire mitigation thing. I think it's a good thing
Yeah.
to have. And Nate, I was looking at a super old map that I have of the plat of the town.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize, but there's an alley on one side of our lot. It says alley, and it's kind of curved. It's way up high where it'll never be developed. It's like a right of way that goes into the mountain,
Mhm.
kind of up towards Thomas Trail. It's kind of funny. So, I mean, they were platted, I think.
Yeah, they're platted all over the place.
Yeah, all
They
over the
just-
place. Yeah.
They just haven't been actually
They're not
used or
used,
developed,
right,
except for
okay.
maybe in a couple of instances.
okay.
You know, for fire mitigation, it would be really helpful if it were dedicated to the town. And if there are standing dead trees or diseased trees, it would certainly be an opportunity to get those removed. And it would be the town's responsibility.
Yep.
The next question I'm highlighting here, he just asked, does the PC act as the HPC? And I said, we discussed this evening. We need a cascading HPC as we discussed.
What is HPC?
It's the question that Rocco asked about.
Historic
HPC.
preservation.
Historic
Historic preservation. So it's not what we talked about. is it?
Historic Preservation
No, it's not.
Committee?
What did you ask about, Rocco? It was the,
Town.
The planning director.
okay, I thought that's what he was talking about here.
Does PC,
From what Austin said, he's going to rework something to give us flexibility, right? So I don't know if
I don't think this is what it's referring to. PC would be Planning Commission. What's an HPC?
it's probably historic
His-
preservation.
It
Committee.
is. It is.
Which we don't have.
But I wonder if we just hold off on all of Article 5 because it sounds like he's going to rework with flexibility what this planning director might be.
Yeah, so I just put here, you are reworking.
Yeah. And the answer would be no. Well, I don't know.
Well,
Or that we don't have a HPC. Anyway.
well,
I think the planning commission would probably act as that.
Right, but we don't have, yeah. Okay.
all right, please confirm if PC and BOA are the same body and no need to have BOA. Board of
Adjustments.
Adjustment, that's the one.
That's the one, okay.
So we addressed tonight, yeah. The,
Board of
that's what we
Adjustment.
talked about, yeah. That we don't have a separate Board of Adjustment, but that the PC would act as the BOA or the BOA would go to the Board of Trustees or whatever. Anyway,
Yeah.
So I'm just reminding him that we asked for a cascading, you know, this,
Yeah.
or this person, or this.
right.
Whatever the situation is. Do we actually have an admin manual?
No,
An admin what?
no, we do
Land
not.
use administrative manual.
Oh, manual.
Okay,
In his spare time, he was going to get that done.
Mm-mm. No plans.
major subdivision, require a bond or deposit with final plats to ensure construction of required public improvements. I always like to require a bond or some kind of guarantee that they're going to
Mhm.
do. Is that good with y'all? Anybody against that? I'm happy to have a deposit to say, I'm for real and I'm gonna follow your rules.
What page are you on?
It is page 39. C, major subdivision. And his comment is asking if we want to require a bond or deposit with final plats to ensure construction of required public improvements. And again, the idea that anybody's going to come in and put in a subdivision is highly unlikely, but if they are, I'd love to have a deposit.
Well, before Historic Green Mountain Falls Foundation bought not Red Butte, before they bought Mount Dewey, the previous landowner wanted to build a subdivision up there.
No.
He also wanted the town to lay out roads and things for him up there.
Mhm.
And when the town said no, he kind of walked away, but it could happen.
Right,
It's
so
always good to have a bond.
I like a bond or a deposit, so.
Yeah, agreed.
Mhm.
Wow, that's all the comments I had. And yet there's so much more here, so I don't know. I don't have any other comments from Austin.
Should we talk about our comments? The substantial ones?
Please, and I'm gonna pull up, since we're doing this, I'm gonna pull up. Todd had a lot of comments too, so I'm gonna look for that. But go ahead with yours, Rocco.
On page 6, they talk about this downtown village overlay.
Mhm.
I think it's page 6.
Yeah.
And Austin talked about that it had some relief in the parking, but it also had additional requirements. I find those additional requirements pretty onerous. Talking about the design standards, you can't use stucco, for instance. They talk about windows and window glazing.
Mhm.
I think this is really getting too detailed, and I just want to see what other people think when we talk about the design standards for that downtown village overlay.
I agree with you, Rocco.
Yeah, I don't think our town is, I mean, our little downtown's large enough that we need to make it all look the same or whatever. Mike says also glazed windows. He's like, too much detail, remove. Yeah. That was
So
his
it's
comment.
specifically on page 6, I guess, starting paragraph 2A, Roman numeral 4, under design.
All the way to the next page too.
I think the first subparagraph, primary buildings constructed of high quality durable materials. Okay. That makes sense, but the subparagraph 2, subparagraph 3, subparagraph 4, subparagraph 5. Personally, I think that's too much detail.
And he also put in the chart though, that awnings or canopies extend 4 feet. So all the businesses need to put up awnings or canopies extending 4 feet. I think that's to make it like pedestrian friendly or something in the rain or something. I don't know. Anyway,
He was wanting
that's
to make
also in
it-
his chart.
Yeah, I think he was wanting to make it look like more of a pedestrian area. It was just sort of a design concept. So run through all of yours, Rocco. And by the way, Mike had some comments. Todd's got some as well on same page 2, 3.
Do we print those out ourselves? I don't have all Mike's and everybody's comments.
Well, that's what
We-
Nate,
just
We
Amy
we don't
has.
get to see those.
no, Nate.
No, that's what we're sharing our comments with each
Oh,
other.
how did you
Got
get?
it.
This is
Right
mine.
now?
He's not here.
Oh,
He
he's
dropped it
not-
off.
I'm sorry. I thought maybe it was
We're
already
talking
printed
about
out.
it, and we're talking about it right now and sharing it with each other. Plus Nate's going to collate all of this and get it to us. But just
Oh,
for the-
that's good.
I'll send this to Nate, but as you are supposed to do as well. But I'm telling you that Todd mentioned 2A3, the pedestrian oriented side features. Todd said this is a feel good, non-enforceable statement, and we're supposed to have stuff that can be enforced, right? And then below that, on number 4, number 2, he said similarly to Rocco, I guess, and Mike, there's a lot of imitation stone and brick used in many places. Do we really want this section? But you cannot have asphalt shingles, imitation stone, imitation brick, stucco, any of those kind of finishes on a street facing building facade in our building district.
I think that's overkill too.
So it sounds like there's many comments against that subparagraph Roman numeral 4, and then that subsection 2, 3, 4 deal with the windows,
Mhm.
5.
And 5, yeah.
And I would agree with Todd about the pedestrian stuff up above Roman numeral 3.
3-1, 3-2 is okay. You should have a pedestrian
What does that
entrance.
mean? What does that even mean?
So for every, that the pedestrian entrance would be in the front, not in the back. For every building, which I think is reasonable for a business. Okay. Okay.
It is hard to understand practically what that means. I suppose it's just what Todd said. It's a feel-good, non-enforceable statement, right?
So Lamar, Ann just left. We still have 3 commissioners, so we still have a quorum.
Okay, thanks. Where did she's not coming back?
She had to go.
Okay, all right. So more comments, Rocco?
So that's for that one. On page 7, I guess, the historic preservation overlay. I think we all agreed that any of the historic preservation requirements would be at the property owner's request. It's not something that we would dictate that certain structures are historic. It would be someone would petition us for that designation. Is that correct?
That's what we discussed, Rocco.
And so that should probably be explicitly stated in the code.
Mhm. That's what Mike has too, and I agree.
I think I copied most everybody on an email to Jesse to try to get an update on what they did with their survey of historic homes, or just sort of the character of Green Mountain Falls. And I'd really like to have that information in case
Did you get that report?
I have not.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
I wanted them to maybe, I know it's not finished probably yet, but let me see if I missed an email from.
I do remember you, I was copied on one where you asked for it.
Let me see if he's answered me. Nope, I don't have an answer. So I will ask again. I'll make a note. To do that, because I know there was some intent or some sort of concept with this survey, and I just want to make sure that it doesn't fall by the wayside as we're doing all of this. I have down what you said, and Rocco, you'll be providing this as well, but it's good we're discussing it. Todd, right above historic overlay, number 5C about the awnings right here.
Right.
Todd's comment was, for our downtown, this may require easements.
Well, yeah.
Have a minimum vertical clearance of 9 feet above the sidewalk.
Yeah, I thought it was just too much detail for that whole paragraph.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
But
y'all.
but I'm just noting it's in his chart,
Yeah.
specifically about the awnings. One of them. He showed it on the PowerPoint, I guess.
Partly what he was trying to accomplish here was what he says here in 8, These standards are part incentives, one part incentives and one part additional design requirements that seek to achieve the goals in the comp plan related to spurring additional pedestrian-oriented high-quality development downtown. So if you're wondering why,
Mhm.
Hale, it's because of number 8 down there, the footnote. Now, you guys may not feel it achieves that, but it does bring up some imagination and sort of a thought process, but I don't know that we want that in code, right?
Right.
Maybe it's even that we would encourage this or something like that, but something not requiring it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and encouraging design or would be, of course, it's not enforceable,
Right.
just like above, visually pleasing, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's the feel good thing that we talked about. But
And maybe it's okay to leave something like that in there. I know it's not enforceable because it's not well defined, but it
Yeah.
is suggestive.
yeah, I think so too. I think so too. What else, Rocco? And again, you're going to include all your comments. It's just if we want to discuss it.
Sure. Page 11, that end of the permitted uses table. I guess at the very end, it's temporary uses. So we had talked about some conditional uses for food truck garage sale, but that specific section is temporary uses. So I think that's the
Okay.
highest permitted use it could be is temporary.
Yes. And I think he's done everything that I sent to him that we discussed on this. It's scary to think we can't leave out manufactured housing, given, just so we have a discussion, given what he said about the legal risk, is there anybody who isn't okay with including it due to the legal risk?
Who isn't okay with including it?
A bunch of double negatives.
Okay, yeah.
So if HUD can come in and sue us if we don't include this, I think I probably want to follow my attorney's advice and have it in there. Is there anyone who disagrees with that?
I agree with leaving it in.
I agree with it.
Yeah.
And we'll have to explain that to Mike, right? and see if Mike says, okay, sue me or don't. I'm sorry. What else were you wanting to say on this?
When we're on that, the only thing is, it is true, the density and fire risk is a big deal.
Mhm.
That would be, like in the hurricanes, those trailer, the mobile home parks are hit the worst with any of these disasters when there's high density. And
I want to read what he's done with the fire mitigation. I haven't gotten there yet. So has anybody else read it yet?
no, well, let's
Yeah,
see.
just a couple of paragraphs.
Let's see.
Before we get to that, page 17 talks about grading. It says any land disturbing activity whose design requires the grading of slope shall meet the following standards. I would propose that we write in any land disturbing activity involved in the construction of a building. And I would say that because we build trails on open space here in town. And
Yes.
I don't think it makes sense to run through hoops when we already designed for erosion and things like that. And we're using hand tools. So I would just maybe tighten up that definition and I can write up what I'm proposing.
Good, Rocco. I totally agree.
Mhm.
And so then wildfires are on page 18.
Okay.
So there's a subparagraph H. So they talk about vegetation and tree canopies, minimum clearance 10 feet from any structure. I think that's prudent. Then
This is under number 3 standards or lower?
it's on page 18, subparagraph H, wildfires.
Okay.
Roman numeral 1, yeah. I think
Okay.
that makes sense, but I think the second Roman numeral 2 doesn't make sense because they talk about being more than 3 driving miles from the nearest fire station. I don't think there's anywhere in town where that would even apply. So I think that can be removed.
Okay.
And then the third one talks about fire resistive construction and landscaping. But it doesn't say to what standard. And so,
Yeah.
you know, it's a nice phrase, but how do we measure if an applicant comes in, if it's fire resistive construction and landscaping? And maybe there is a standard, and if there is, it should be referenced.
Let's see here. Huh. Yeah, he doesn't reference WUI code like that, so, yeah, good catch, Rocco.
And Mike has on number 2, any development which is located more than 3 driving miles from the nearest fire station shall have approved. And he writes question mark, any place in Green Mountain Falls fits this?
Just like Rocco said.
Yep.
So Lamar, I just have a couple more things that I wanted to mention regarding setbacks, and it'll probably be valuable with Nate here as well. I think on page 15, application of setbacks.
Yeah.
And they talk about measuring the setbacks, and 3D and 3E, neither of those really made sense to me about the rear setback.
I think this is where he was trying to get creative. What do you think about this, Nate? Ian?
I don't know what it means. The rear yard line and
Yeah, I don't really understand it.
I mean, if the goal is to simplify, he has not met the goal.
yeah.
Yeah, this is a,
So D and E, I think both major questions. I think we need to be pretty clear about what a rear setback is.
Yep.
Mike had the same question. I do too.
Okay, good.
So really, that's the stuff I wanted to bring up, and then I can consolidate all my comments and I guess forward them to Nate as the procedure.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
then Lamar, did you note all these?
I have made notes. Yes, I have. but
Okay,
He'll send them to you. I'm looking for a few more that, oh, we're past our time, aren't we? Todd thought, on this page that I'm showing out, mention article. It's, no, y'all don't have pages. But Article 4 is what I'm looking for. And it is page 14 on mine. Right above that, he had a comment on the outdoor eating area. And he thinks that this 32 inches should be increased to 36 inches. Anyway, I'll just let Todd make that comment. That's probably not something we need to discuss. Anyway, he will deal with all that. And we'll see it. I've already sent it to Nate. I've sent it to Lisa. And then I'll send it to people individually as well. I think it helps if we see each other's comments. All right, anything else, Lisa?
No.
Rocco, we got through yours.
Yeah, I mean, I got plenty more, but I'll just,
Yeah.
nothing huge.
Good, good. Nate, is there anything that jumps out at you that you want us to think about?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. All right, well, I think we ran everybody off nearly. Carolyn's hung in there. So I believe, Nate, you were going to give us an update. That was, I don't have my agenda up. Where is it? There it is. Other business. What were you going to say, Nate?
Yeah, let me just pull up my summary here. Where's my controls?
Hey, guys, I can't hear you.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm trying to get the
We're not-
controls back. One sec. So I just compiled just a simple summary of, just to keep track of the spending on this. So this is basically a summary of the budget that we sort of started with, 25,000 from DOLA, 25,000 town match, and then the remaining 20,000 from Kirkpatrick, assuming that 25 of the 45 goes to cover that town match. But this is the summary of what has been spent so far. So total spent on Nina was this figure. Total spent so far on Austin's work is this number so far, 6,415. And so this is the total spent so far, 37,212.64. And if we we're saying, we were saying at the beginning of the Austin process, bringing him on to do that we wanted to keep it below 25,000. So we've spent 6,415. So we have about 18,584 left to spend with Austin, which, based on the progress we're making so far, I think that we're safe in that figure. So that's just kind of the summary that I have for you.
Hey, thanks for providing that. That's very helpful. I get questions on public comment, potentially how, but again, everybody heard that tonight, that these are sort of our decisions. We want to hear the public comment and they'll have some good suggestions that we missed. But hopefully it's not reworking anything that would be expensive. So. But that's kind of up to us. His invoice as of 10/11 covered through today's date, or probably not. He wouldn't have. Do you know
It was the end of the month.
it's end of the month? So
Yeah, so there's a few more hours
yeah.
than what's reported here.
Okay.
We asked that office manager he was talking about, we requested kind of an update last week and she didn't really reply to that. She just kind of sent her normal invoice that she usually does month end. So if we want to, I mean, I can, like he said, we could just request sort of a weekend, or a weekly update, I guess, just to make sure we're not hitting that or burning through it more quickly. Now, I was kind of surprised the first invoice, the 8/31 invoice. Yeah, so this invoice date is not correct. So that's really an 09/30 invoice instead of an 8/31, but we just received it today. So anyway, so if you want, I can just ask them to provide more timely weekly updates if we want to keep a tighter rein on that.
Nate, please do that because, his time he spent with us tonight is going to be expensive.
Right.
Maybe you could ask for a bi-weekly,
Okay.
I don't know.
I can just ask. I mean, just
That doesn't
see,
sound too
she could just
crazy.
put hopefully something on our calendar and just say, hey, I just don't know how their internal system, how often they report, hours or whatever. So, but I can make that request.
Becky had made that request to them and they said that they would really help with it. So,
Yeah.
we don't want to end up at the end of this thing and Rocco's having to write code.
Yeah. Agreed. So,
Carolyn, did you want to ask us something?
no, she just said she didn't want you writing code.
If we run out of money, Rocco, you never know what could happen.
He says he wants to.
Okay.
I'll do it in 5 pages or less.
Well, good. Maybe it'll be less expensive.
Oh,
All right. Well, if there's nothing, thanks so much, Nate, for keeping track of that. That's so helpful.
Anyway,
I just want to thank everybody. I'm sorry I have to do all this remote, but my daughter's having her 3rd baby and she's got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old and she just needs a lot of help. So I got to be there with her. So anyway, that's what's happening here. But if there's no other comments, questions, or whatever, we can stand adjourned. Is everybody good with that?
good.
yep.
Thank y'all for being there tonight. Thanks
Very
for
good.
everything.
All right. Thank you.